Very pleased now to be joined here at Blogging the Boys by the one and only the sixth member of the Avengers. You know him from Canal Street Chronicles, one of my favorite sites across all the SB Nation universities, Nic Jennings. Nic, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Hey, RJ, nice to be here.
I want to start with something that you probably didn't expect at all. So the last video in our YouTube channel before this one, this is dropping on Thursday, September 12th, was an interview that I did with Julian Edelman. And so my question is, how much do you love him, given that he helped stop the Falcons from winning a Super Bowl?
Oh, man, I can't thank him enough. I cannot thank him enough. It was a pleasure watching them get beat without the Steelers even scoring a touchdown on Sunday. It was an extra present along with the Saints' dominant win. Yeah, I mean, it's been great to see the Falcons just continue to pummel themselves and just dig down a deeper hole. But, yeah, it's great. I love watching Edelman in the Super Bowl versus them. I still have bookmarks of that Super Bowl from people saying they had won the game at halftime and everything. It's just it's such a rich moment in Saints history.
That's the only Super Bowl game I've ever been to. And so in a way, you and I are kind of, intrinsically tied together because of that. I absolutely love the pettiness between the Saints Falcons rivalry. There are not a lot, like Cowboys Eagles is definitely up there. But Saints Falcons is such a unique thing. A few years ago when the Bucs won the Super Bowl, I saw these great memes between Falcons and Saints content creators. They were like, we really could not care less. Like we only hate each other. Like we don't hate you whatsoever. Congrats or whatever you want to feel.
We were fighting over hating one another. Yeah. I mean, that's the NFC South for you.
That's awesome. So the Cowboys playing the Saints on Sunday afternoon. Really excited for this game. Really excited to learn who the Saints are. You're here, obviously, to help us with that. You started right before we started recording saying that you wanted to get into Derek Carr a lot. Yes. Derek Carr was incredible. One of the better quarterbacks against pressure last week. So was Dak Prescott, for what it's worth. And the last time, I don't know if you recall this, that he was in the building at AT&T Stadium was Thanksgiving Day in 2021 as the quarterback of the Raiders. It was a really contentious game for Dallas, but Derek Carr was a big reason why Vegas won, and seemingly a big reason why the Saints are the talk of the town right now.
Absolutely. I mean, he looked elite on Sunday. We haven't seen this aggressiveness and poise from Carr in so long. The accountability showed, the ball placement. I mean, really everything. He was great. I mean, he led the league in PFF grade for quarterbacks in week 1. He looked great. He had 200 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. The Saints offense got touchdowns to 5 different players, which was magnificent compared to last season. It was very predictable last season, and you really had no idea what the Saints were scheming up against the Panthers on Sunday. But, yeah, I mean, the touchdowns to Foster Moreau and Juwan Johnson, the ball placement and confidence on those throws were absolutely ridiculous. It was really great to see. Yeah,
I think this is maybe like the peak version of who we thought Carr could be when he signed with New Orleans, and that's why it was kind of exciting when it happened. Feels, correct me if I'm wrong, the best moment in the brief Derek Carr era in New Orleans. It has to be.
Absolutely. I mean, that touchdown to Rashid Shaheed under 3 minutes into the game, off his back foot, pressure in his face, perfect 59-yard bomb. You can't ask for much more from Carr. All we can hope is that he stays consistent and continues this momentum into the next week.
Now, it feels like Rashid Shaheed is sort of arriving. And forgive me, I don't mean this in any sort of slight of a way. But the Saints have kind of faded from national attention, just for the last couple of years, obviously in the aftermath of Drew Brees' retirement. And so sometimes when that happens, people are like, oh, this Rashid Shaheed guy is pretty good. And obviously, Dallas played in the afternoon last week. And so it's just kind of checking in on things through Red Zone. And it's like, okay, this is cool. And I feel like I haven't seen anything from Chris Olave like in a million years. And so is my read on that off? Is he a little underrated in that sense? Like, because again, the first weapon I thought of when I wanted to ask you about him was Rashid Shaheed, and I feel like it should be Chris Olave.
Yeah, I mean, Olave, he was a little quiet on Sunday, but I wouldn't expect that to be the case. This offense is just getting started. You could see they were running multiple of the same plays on Sunday. They really didn't dive deep into their bag once they got that big lead. So I would expect Olave to have some plays made out for him that will really get him on track. He had a nice 17-yard first down conversion, but that was really about all we saw from Olave on Sunday. Rashid Shaheed took the majority of the deep threat shots. He's going to be the team's primary deep threat. They're kind of trying to fit Olave into that wide receiver 1 role while also keeping him as the explosive playmaker he is. So it's kind of hard to balance that, but I expect Kubiak to figure that out relatively soon.
Let's talk about Kubiak. Obviously, very popular name around the NFL. Everybody knows him. The Cowboys have a relationship with Kubiaks in the past. Your thoughts, obviously, on the initial kind of unveiling of what he had to offer?
It was outstanding. Last year, the Saints were ranked last in motion, and we were ranked number 1 through week 1. So it was really something to see. I mean, the offense, we have not seen this in years. Since Drew Brees had left, we have not seen I guess a fluent offense, you could say, that has an identity that looks like, even when they're not making the right plays, when something doesn't go right, you're not like, what was that? What are they doing? Like, you see the vision. There's a vision with everything, and everything seemed – I mean, there was one play. They had Rashid Shaheed and Taysom Hill in the backfield, Jawan Johnson in motion, Alvin Kamara and Olave outside, and it ended up as a Jawan touchdown. I'm calling a timeout if I'm that defense. What the heck is going on? So, yeah, I mean, it's really a creative offense that can really get a lot of these options going. Throughout the offseason, he had a motto called shoot your bullets. He wants to shoot your bullets. Use your playmakers. That was a problem throughout the Saints last year. I mean, on third downs, you could see Alvin Kamara was not on the field, and you're just like, what's going on here? You want him on the field on third down. So Kubiak knows how to use his playmakers.
Well, and that takes me to Alvin Kamara, who I feel like has probably had to shoulder the most frustration in the aftermath of Brees' retirement to get to this point now. Just kind of, and it's so silly to make any kind of over dramatic, assessment because it's week 1, whatever.
Yeah.
But looking at that game, Kamara, a lot of people, just to kind of contextualize where I was coming from, were kind of pumped because Zeke Elliott looked solid in his debut. Yeah. And I think a lot of people thought like, there's no way this is going to work. And again, one game, whatever, but just kind of diving into how the Saints played against the Panthers, positive rush yards over expectation. I didn't really expect that. I kind of thought Alvin was a little washed, if I'm being honest with you. And it doesn't seem like that's the case, at least right now.
No, I think that's far from the case regarding Alvin. Alvin had, in 2021, he went through some injuries that kind of slowed him down, and that is when the Saints kind of plummeted into their little hole where everything was just going wrong and they couldn't figure anything out on offense. So it was a couple tough years for Alvin, but he looked absolutely outstanding on Sunday. He showed that he is still Alvin Kamara, his unreal balance, his unreal agility, an 81 overall PFF grade with a 79 run grade and a 71 receiving grade. He was absolutely outstanding. You could look to him whenever you needed to move the ball downfield, and he was always there to make a play. And they actually used him in the end zone, the red zone this time, which was a refreshing sight to see. So hopefully no more Alvin Kamara touchdowns will be vultured now that Clint Kubiak is here.
Well, Clint Kubiak's getting all the love and all the praise. And I'm well familiar with the offensive coordinator getting all the love and the head coach just being ignored. Dennis Allen, probably the hottest seat entering 2024. I don't know if you would agree. I have a Saints fan friend, or a Saints fan who's a really good friend of mine, and he hates him. I mean, like with his entire heart. And I don't know. Like and it again. I think we tend. I don't know if you're like me. I tend to look at the rest of the NFL through the lens of the Cowboys. So maybe you do that with the Saints. And it would bother me forever that Kellen Moore got all this love and all this praise, and Mike McCarthy got none of it. And so. Do you attribute anything to Dennis Allen? Is what happened in spite of him? Like, have your feelings or emotions changed on Dennis Allen? Is Dennis Allen a factor that Cowboys fans should be worried about in the way that maybe Clint Kubiak obviously is?
Yeah, I mean, I lead kind of towards both sides of the fence with Dennis Allen. I see where the frustration comes, but I've never really understood the full amount of hate that he gets. I mean, this defense was terrible for years and years and years. Dennis Allen came, he revitalized it, he changed it. It's been one of the best for years now. Now, Sean Payton leaves, Dennis Allen comes in, has a couple tough years as a head coach, but you can't deny the defense. The defense has been there the whole way through, and on Sunday they looked unreal. I mean, they had Alontae Taylor, slot corner, second year in the slot, had 3 sacks on Sunday, tying the record for most by a DB in an NFL game. The pressure has taken a massive step from last season with the addition of Chase Young. They've incorporated the NASCAR package with both Granderson and Young on the edge and Brissy and Cam Jordan inside, which is very hard to block with all that speed and power. And, yeah, I mean, the defensive backs really haven't dropped off with the addition of Kool-Aid McKinstry. You have Marshawn Lattimore, McKinstry, Adebo, Tyrann Mathieu, and a young Jordan Howden looking to prove himself in this league.
I'm kind of worried. Like, I've seen it before that there's, the hot team that comes in and announces themselves in a game at AT&T Stadium. And because the whole world's watching the Cowboys, like all of a sudden everybody so like I could see this going very New Orleans and then everybody really buying in, entering week 3 next week, which would be my worst nightmare. You mentioned Marshawn Lattimore. I've read that there's a question or a concern that he might not play. That seems to be the biggest factor, obviously, because he would be on CeeDee Lamb.
Absolutely, yeah. He tweaked his hamstring late in the game against the Panthers on Sunday. He told the media he was fine, but it's something to monitor due to his recent hip flexor injury that he suffered throughout the offseason. He missed the majority of training camp with that, so he's been dealing with some injuries, but he said he's fine. That's all we can go off of now, so I would hope he can be out there. It hasn't been official yet, so he's still questionable.
You seem really confident. So let's say you're a 10 out of 10 confident with Marshawn Lattimore. What does that drop to if he doesn't play specifically?
I would say about 7 because it doesn't fully tarnish that defense. That defense has got some really talented defensive backs. Paulson Adebo is one of the most underrated defensive backs in the NFL last season. Kool-Aid McKinstry was one of the better DBs in the draft and had a great game on Sunday. You have undrafted free agent Rico Payton from Pittsburgh State University, I believe. Yes, Pittsburgh State University, and he is a dog. Like, he is straight up a dog. He's at the right spot at the right time. You can't throw his way. He's there to defend the passes. He led the Saints in PFF grade throughout defensive backs throughout the preseason. He was just great. He had a rough beginning to training camp, but he's really caught on and found himself in this league. And I think the Saints are pretty set at defensive back.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, I would imagine your confidence is maybe impacted without Marshawn because it's CeeDee Lamb. Like, if it's the Panthers or something, maybe that kind of it isn't as big of a deal.
Sure.
I guess along those lines, there's been a lot of like, oh yeah, the Saints look great, but it was the Panthers, whatever. What have been y'all's thoughts at Canal Street Chronicles this week, or just among Saints fans? Because the Panthers are bad. Like, we can all agree on that. Are there Saints fans who are unwilling to buy in, who are scared to believe, or is it just like, no, we're all chugging the Kool-Aid, we're all ready to believe, like, yeah, the Panthers suck, but we boat raced them, so who cares?
I think right now the majority of the Saints fans are all the way in because this has just been such a huge step forward from last season. But in reality, I do understand where fans say it's just the Panthers. The Panthers aren't good, but it's an NFL defense, and they dropped 47 points on them. That's not easy by any means. So, and it was fluent. They scored 9 consecutive scoring drives. That is not easy to do. And they just looked great either way. I do think that the Panthers being not great of a team had something to do with it, but I still think the Saints dominated this game and would have won if it was another team.
Do you view this game as an opportunity to really learn who the Saints are? Like, I'm curious for your perspective on who the Cowboys are. Like, a lot of people think, oh, it's just the Cowboys are losing the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. But obviously they've been in the playoffs 3 years in a row. Like, again, is this a measuring stick game? I'm just kind of curious for your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely encouraging, but I don't think it's a major sign of anything to come yet. It's just week 1. The Saints have won 6 straight week 1 games, so this is common. We've seen this a couple years ago. They beat the Packers 38-3 with Aaron Rodgers. So it's just it happens on week 1. Teams are rusty, so we'll just have to see if it continues. But regarding the Cowboys, I am so frightened of that pass rush and that pressure. It is honestly scary. The Saints' offensive line looked poor throughout the offseason, even though they had one of the stronger performances in the league on Sunday, only allowing 5 pressures. They are not a fully confident unit. Left guard Lucas Patrick actually left the game with a toe injury on Sunday, and Trevor Penning had the best game of his career, which is saying a lot compared to the previous games of his career. So I will say that the defensive pass rush unit for the Cowboys definitely frightens me, and hopefully the Saints can hold that up.
Well, then who's the player on the Cowboys side of things that you think Saints fans are losing the most sleep over? Maybe, the Marshawn Lattimore situation, impacts that, because without him, it's probably CeeDee Lamb. But I mean, just generally speaking, is it Micah Parsons, or are you more afraid of CeeDee Lamb just in a general sense?
I think it's going to have to be Micah Parsons. I mean, he had 11 pressures, 6 QB hits, 6 pressures, 4 QB hits, and 1 sack, and a pass defense leading to an interception. That's unreal. He balled out. You really can't get better than that. So, yeah, I think Micah Parsons is a big fright to the Saints. He will be on Trevor Penning as well, so that's something to watch out for.
Yeah, I don't know if you feel this way. I think, we talked about division rivalries, but the Cowboys and Saints have this weird relationship. I don't know. It's not quite a rivalry. Obviously, they're geographically close to one another. And now, I mean, Dak Prescott's from the area. CeeDee Lamb's a displaced person from the area because of Hurricane Katrina. So you've got all these, kind of things underneath the surface. But the last time they played, Mike McCarthy didn't coach. I don't know if you recall this. He was on the COVID list. That was in New Orleans. It was a Thursday night game. The last time they met in this building at AT&T Stadium was also a Thursday night game, and that was a big win for the Cowboys at that moment in time. That 2018 season, it was the Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch kind of run.
Yeah.
And there's also, I mean, the year the Saints won the Super Bowl in 2009, Dallas was the first team to knock them off. And so the Cowboys have had these like really seismic moments against the Saints that ultimately have meant nothing. But I'm curious, like, do you view the Cowboys in any sort of, obviously you hate the Falcons more than anybody, but
yeah.
like, are the Cowboys special in hatred in your eyes?
I don't necessarily have any animosity towards Dallas. I mean, I know people who do, but they were back in the day in a division with New Orleans, very back in the day. So that could have something to do with it, but I wouldn't say there's a rivalry, but I definitely would say the matchups are always very intensifying. I remember when Jalen Smith rocked Alvin Kamara and that started a whole frenzy. I mean, yeah, their matchups are always very good.
Yeah, even in 2012, they had this high-scoring game, and Jimmy Graham had a fumble, and it looked like Dallas was going to pull it off, and the Cowboys lost in overtime. Like, again, it's just some weird memories is maybe the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Something I like to ask people. Let's assume the Cowboys win. What is something from someone who knows the Saints so well? What is something that the Dallas could do that you would be like, damn, like, respect? Like what would really impress you, again, like working against the Saints? Like, what could they do, or maybe not do, maybe not allow, that you would walk away being like, okay, that team could win the Super Bowl because they contained or they won here, whatever the case?
I would say being able to, there's probably two things, one on offense, one on defense. I'd say on defense, being able to contain the Saints' new run game, which was crazy on Sunday with Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara. That was very good to see. So I think that would be a big test for the Cowboys because, I mean, it's Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill. They're very hard to stop. And on offense, I'd like to see Dak be a little more consistent with these Saints DBs and the pressure that comes off the line. I think if Dak can prove to be a productive piece against the Saints on Sunday, that they can really blow the Saints out of the water. But it could also go both ways if the Saints do that. So it's going to be an interesting game. I either think it's going to be, like in my questions with David, I said, do you believe that it'll either be like the 2021 Saints versus Cowboys, where the Cowboys edged them out, or the 2021 Raiders versus Cowboys, where Derek Carr edged out the Cowboys 33-36. That was a very good game as well.
Yeah. You just poured salt in a lot of people's wounds. That Thanksgiving Day game against the Raiders, Anthony Brown was still playing corner for Dallas and had like 4 unbelievable pass interference penalties that were kind of the story. It was weird. No shots against Derek Carr. I don't feel like anybody walked away from that game being like, oh man, Derek Carr beat us. Like, it was just one of those weird things. I appreciate the idea that Dak Prescott, if he plays well, if he dominates New Orleans' secondary, that maybe goes a long way in the discussion of it all. And I guess my last kind of major one, because the Cowboys and Saints haven't played since that 2021 game, and so I haven't had a chance to really kind of talk to somebody who covers the Saints and knows them well. What's y'all's thoughts on the Taysom Hill thing? Like, I feel like I feel like it's such a divisive subject among fans, and maybe it was more divisive when he was actually a threat to play quarterback, and maybe that's calmed it down a little. But I feel that's one of those things that maybe people on the outside don't know the real battles that y'all have had in the comment section.
Absolutely. I mean, the Taysom Hill dilemma has been going on for years and years and years. Ever since he signed that massive contract, it's just been the topic point of Twitter. So I'd like to say, first, the QB is out of the picture for Taysom. That is not he's listed as tight end on the 2024 roster. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. So I can see where on the outside, if you didn't really see that clarification, where you were just kind of like, where's Taysom going to end up? But no, yeah, he's done at QB. I wouldn't say that is going to be any topic of discussion in the future. But when it comes to this year, he's picked up a new role in this Kubiak system. They've put him at fullback, where he's displayed his blocking. They put him in the backfield, where he showed his power running and aggressiveness and his determination. And they've even put him at tight end, catching screens. And they targeted him with a long 39-yard pass in the end zone, which was broken up on Sunday. So I believe Taysom is going to get action anywhere that he can on this football field. And I mean, you could even see him line up at quarterback and take off a QB power. I mean, you really don't know what you're going to get from Taysom.
Yeah, I mean, he's annoying in that sense. And I would bet he's going to have a big moment. It's very Dallas Cowboys for Taysom Hill to have this stupid, unbelievable play, like you're like lining up in fullback or something like that. And just, again, I'm already annoyed at the idea. The Saints are 6.5-point dogs, which maybe feels disrespectful given everything from last week. Does it feel disrespectful? And do you like that line? I guess is my question. Prediction time.
I wouldn't say it's disrespectful. The Saints still have the reputation of the Saints from the past couple of years. It's just week one, so I wouldn't say a dominating win over the Panthers is justifying changing your narrative on them quite yet. But I would say it was very encouraging in that it showed the potential of what they can be. So I would say I don't know about that big of a difference, but I would say that the Cowboys deserve to be favored in this game, especially in AT&T Stadium.
Okay, and who are you picking?
I'd have to pick the Cowboys for this one. It's tough, but I think the Saints have a tough schedule coming up at the beginning of this season. They play the Cowboys and the Eagles. It's pretty tough games back to back. But I think if the Saints can pull this one off, that can be a complete change of this season, complete change of the narrative for this season, and they could really get hot and start to get on a roll.
I hadn't quite realized that New Orleans plays Philadelphia next week, and so I hope y'all beat them by 50. I mean, that goes without saying. And we could return the favor when the Cowboys play the Falcons. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, let's
absolutely.
let's just hold hands and kind of walk the way through this. Nic, this has been awesome. Canal Street Chronicles. Let us know where you're at on social. Every single thing, plug away.
You can find me at Nic C. Jennings, NIC Jennings on all social media platforms.
Interesting. And Canal Street Chronicles is the best source for New Orleans Saints discussion and analysis. CeeDee Lamb said this week that he wants to be in New Orleans, but obviously not on a regular basis. Just at the end of the season. The Super Bowl in New Orleans is the best place to have it. I like Arizona. I like the Vegas thing was cool one time. The Florida locations are cool, but the Superdome is it's a different kind of special. It should always be there, in my opinion.
The city just embraces it, and it just becomes one of the best times of the year. I completely agree with you. It just belongs in the Superdome.
Hopefully the Cowboys are there. If not, I'll settle for the Saints. Nic, thanks so much for the time, man. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you, man.